I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 27 years old. My father's words still echo in my head 10 years later. You'll come crawling back, you worthless loser. My mother screamed from the porch, "Don't ever come back," as I stood there with 2 garbage bags containing everything I owned. The neighbors were watching from their windows, because apparently, my family's destruction of me needed an audience. I didn't cry. Not then. I just picked up those bags and walked away from the house I'd called home for 17 years. You know what's funny about hitting rock bottom? At least you know you can't fall any further. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment. It wasn't one big fight. It was years of being told I wasn't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough. My parents, Ray and Linda Mitchell, had this vision of the perfect daughter. Problem was, I wasn't her. My grades were decent but not spectacular. I wasn't interested in beauty pageants like my cousin Jessica. I wanted to study business, maybe start my own company someday. Business? My mother had laughed when I mentioned it during dinner one night. Honey, you can barely balance your checkbook. Maybe aim a little lower. My father was worse. He had this way of looking at me like I was a disappointment that had wandered into his house by mistake. When I told him about my college acceptance letter to state school, he shook his head. Another debt we can't afford for a degree you'll never use. Find yourself a nice boy to marry instead. The final straw came when I got my first job at 17, working weekends at a local diner. I was so proud. Finally earning my own money, proving I could be responsible. I brought home my first paycheck, excited to show them I was contributing to the family. About time you started pulling your weight, my father said, taking the check from my hands. This'll help with the electric bill. I stared at him. But that's my money, I need it for college savings. His face darkened. You live in my house, eat my food, use my electricity. Nothing here belongs to you, including that attitude. That night I heard them talking in the kitchen. She's becoming too independent, my mother said. Thinks she knows better than us. Maybe it's time she learned what the real world is like. My father agreed. Tough love, that's what she needs. So they planned it. While I was at work the next day, they packed my belongings, what few things they considered mine, into garbage bags. When I came home expecting dinner and homework, I found my entire life sitting on the front steps. You think you're so grown up, my father said, crossing his arms. Time to prove it. You want independence? You got it. I remember looking at those bags, then at my parents' faces. Cold, determined, final. This is really happening? I asked. You'll come crawling back within a week, my father sneered. You worthless loser. But I didn't crawl back. And 10 years later, when they showed up at my mansion begging for help, I showed them exactly what this worthless loser had built. December in Seattle isn't kind to homeless teenagers. I learned that the hard way my first night sleeping in Pioneer Square, using my jacket as a blanket and my backpack as a pillow. The rain soaked through everything, and I was pretty sure I was going to die of hypothermia before sunrise. You want to know what's humbling? Asking strangers if you can use their bathroom. Digging through your bag for quarters to buy a cup of coffee just so you can sit somewhere warm for 30 minutes. Watching families walk by and wondering if your parents are sleeping better now that their burden is gone. I'd like to tell you I had some brilliant survival plan, but honestly, I was winging it. The first few days were about basic needs. Where to sleep, where to get food, where to stay warm. I discovered the downtown library opened early and closed late. The YMCA had showers for $5. McDonald's let you sit for hours if you bought something small. By day 3, I'd made friends with Marcus, a guy in his 20s who'd been living on the streets for 2 years. He taught me the unwritten rules of survival. Never sleep in the same place twice, he said, sharing his bag of fries with me. Stay clean as much as possible. People treat you different when you look homeless. And whatever you do, don't let this become permanent. Marcus had been a college student once, too. Kicked out by parents who couldn't accept he was gay. The difference between us, he told me, is you're angry. I gave up. Don't give up. The anger was real. It burned in my chest every time I woke up cold and wet. But it wasn't the destructive kind. It was fuel. Every shiver, every hunger pang, every pitying look from strangers just made me more determined to prove my parents wrong. I started making lists on napkins from fast food restaurants. Things I needed. Stable housing, income, education plan. Things I wanted. To build something they could never take away from me. To never depend on anyone else's approval again. To show them what they'd thrown away. The local community center had job boards and a computer I could use for an hour a day. I applied to everything: retail, food service, cleaning crews. Most places wouldn't hire someone with no fixed address, but I didn't give up. I figured out which businesses had high turnover and needed bodies more than references. My first break came from an unexpected place. There was this older woman, Helen, who managed a small cafe downtown. I'd been going there for 3 days, buying the cheapest thing on the menu and making it last as long as possible while I used their free Wi-Fi to job hunt. On the third day, she sat down across from me. "You're not like the others," she said simply. "You're here with purpose." I looked up from the laptop screen, surprised. "I'm sorry?" "The other homeless kids who come through here. They're just trying to get through the day. You're planning something. What is it?" Something about her directness made me tell the truth. I explained about being kicked out, about needing work, about my college plans that seemed impossible now. Helen listened without judgment. When I finished, she nodded. "I need someone for early morning prep work. 5 a.m. to noon, $8 an hour, paid daily. You interested?" I nearly cried. "Yes, absolutely yes." "One condition," she said. "No sob story to the customers. They're not here for therapy. They're here for good coffee and food. Can you give them that?" I could, and I did. For the first time in weeks, I had hope. But I was about to learn that having a job was just the beginning of climbing out of the hole my parents had thrown me into. Working at Helen's Cafe changed everything, but not in the ways you might expect. Yes, I had income, basic, but steady. The real education came from watching the customers. This wasn't some Starbucks chain. This was where downtown Seattle's business crowd grabbed their morning fuel before heading to office towers. I paid attention. I listened to phone conversations about deals and investments. I watched how people dressed, how they carried themselves, how they spoke. These people had something I wanted: confidence that came from financial security. They didn't worry about where they'd sleep or when they'd eat next. Helen noticed me studying the customers. "Learning the natives' habits?" she asked one morning while we prepped sandwiches. "Something like that," I admitted. "I want to understand how their world works." She smiled. "Smart girl. Most people serve the wealthy without really seeing them. You're figuring out how to become them. Have you ever worked a job where you felt invisible? Where people talked around you like you weren't even there? Drop a comment and let me know. I bet more of you understand this than you might admit. The customers gradually noticed me too. Not because I pushed myself on them, but because I was reliable, efficient, and I remembered their orders. Mr. Patterson, who came in every Tuesday for a double-shot cortado, started making small talk. Mrs. Chen always requested extra foam on her cappuccino and appreciated that I never forgot. After 3 months, something interesting happened. Mr. Patterson was complaining to his business partner about finding reliable people for his cleaning company. "Good help is impossible to find," he said. "Everyone wants easy money. Nobody wants to actually work." I was wiping down the espresso machine, apparently invisible, when I spoke up. "Excuse me, Mr. Patterson. Are you hiring?" He looked surprised that I'd been listening. "For cleaning crews? It's hard work, kid. Early mornings, late nights. I'm already working early mornings here. I could do both." His partner looked skeptical. "You think you can handle 2 jobs? Here's where living on the streets had taught me something valuable: endurance. Sir, I've been working here for 3 months while living in shelters and still maintaining a positive attitude with customers. If I can do that, I can handle cleaning offices." Mr. Patterson studied me for a moment. "You've got grit. I'll give you that. Tell you what, I'll give you a trial run. $10 an hour, 4 nights a week, cleaning downtown office buildings. You mess up once, you're done. Deal?" "Deal." That handshake changed my trajectory. Within a week, I was working 7 days a week. CAF mornings, cleaning offices evenings. I was exhausted, but finally making real money. More importantly, I was inside those business offices after hours, seeing how successful people organized their work, what books they read, what strategies they discussed. I started a notebook, not just tracking my earnings and expenses, but writing down business concepts I overheard. Investment terminology, marketing strategies, management techniques. I was getting a graduate-level education just by paying attention. The cleaning crew supervisor, Rosa, was a woman in her 50s who'd been doing this work for 20 years. She took me under her wing and shared something that stuck with me. People think cleaning is beneath them, but we see everything: their mistakes, their successes, their private moments. Smart girl like you can learn more about business cleaning these offices than most kids learn in college. She was right. I learned that successful people worked longer hours than I'd expected. They made more mistakes than they admitted publicly. They worried about money even when they had plenty of it. But most importantly, they never stopped learning or looking for the next opportunity. By month 6, I'd saved enough for a security deposit on a tiny studio apartment. The first time I turned the key in my own door, I sat on the floor in that empty room and made myself a promise. I would never again let someone else control whether I had a roof over my head. But having an apartment was just the next step. I was about to meet someone who would show me that working hard was only half the equation. Working smart was the other half. The office building where I cleaned floors belonged to Richardson and Associates, a financial consulting firm. Every night, I'd empty their trash cans and dust their desks, and every night, one light would still be on in the corner office. The nameplate read, James Richardson, CFA. Mr. Richardson was usually there until midnight, reviewing documents and making phone calls. At first, he barely noticed me. I was just part of the invisible cleaning crew. But after a few weeks, he started acknowledging me with a nod. Then came the polite, good evening, as I emptied his wastebasket. One night, I was cleaning around his desk when I noticed he'd thrown away a stack of financial reports that were only printed on one side. The paper was still perfectly good for my notes. "Excuse me, sir," I said. "Would it be okay if I took some of this discarded paper? For personal use?" He looked up from his computer, curious. "Sure, but what do you need it for?" I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I keep notes about things I'm learning." "About business." His eyebrows raised. "You're studying business?" "Informally. I listen while I work, read articles online when I can, trying to educate myself." Mr. Richardson leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "What kind of things are you learning?" I could have given him some generic answer, but something told me this was an important moment. I've been trying to understand why some people build wealth while others just work hard but stay poor. From what I can tell, it has something to do with making your money work for you instead of just trading time for dollars. He smiled, not condescendingly, but with genuine approval. "That's a sophisticated observation. Most adults haven't figured that out. How old are you?" 18. "And you're working 2 jobs to support yourself?" I nodded, not mentioning the part about being homeless 6 months earlier. No need for the sob story, as Helen had taught me. "Tell you what," Mr. Richardson said. "I've got about 30 minutes of filing that needs to be done. My assistant is swamped, and I hate paperwork. Would you be interested in earning some extra money organizing these reports? $20 for the hour?" It was a test, and we both knew it. I accepted. I spent the next hour organizing his quarterly reports by date and category, creating a simple filing system that made sense. While I worked, he explained what the reports measured: profit margins, market trends, client portfolio performance. I asked questions. Good questions, apparently, because when I finished, he made an offer that would change everything. "Sarah, that is your name, right? I'm going to make you a proposition. I need someone reliable to help with basic administrative tasks a few hours a week. Filing, data entry, organizing documents. Nothing confidential, nothing above your skill level. But in exchange for your work, I'll teach you about finance and investing. Real knowledge, not just theory." I stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because in 30 years of business, I've learned that the rarest commodity isn't money or connections. It's someone who truly wants to learn and is willing to work for it. Most people want shortcuts. You want understanding." That arrangement became my MBA program. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening after my cleaning shift, I'd spend 2 hours with Mr. Richardson. He taught me how to read financial statements, understand market indicators, and most importantly, think like an investor instead of an employee. "The wealthy don't work for money," he explained during one of our sessions. "They make money work for them. Every dollar you earn should be put to work earning more dollars." I started applying his lessons immediately. Instead of just saving my money in a checking account, I opened a high-yield savings account and began investing small amounts in index funds. $10 here, $20 there. It wasn't much, but I was building the habit. More valuable than the financial education was learning how successful people think. They planned years ahead, not just weeks. They saw problems as opportunities. They networked not just for immediate gain, but to build long-term relationships. Mr. Richardson introduced me to other clients and colleagues as his Prot G. Suddenly, I was invited to industry networking events, not as help, but as someone worth talking to. The confidence that came from being treated as an equal was transformative. But the most important lesson came 6 months into our arrangement, when Mr. Richardson told me something that would become my guiding principle. "Sarah, you have a choice. You can spend your life reacting to what others do to you, or you can take control and create your own opportunities. The difference between victims and victors isn't what happens to them, it's what they do next." I was about to put that philosophy to the test in ways I never could have imagined. By my 20th birthday, I wasn't the same scared kid who'd been thrown out with garbage bags. Working with Mr. Richardson had taught me to think strategically, but I was ready for more than filing and data entry. I wanted to build something of my own. The idea came from an unexpected source. Complaints I kept hearing from the business people at Helen's Caf. They needed reliable, detail-oriented help with projects, but hiring full-time employees was too expensive and time-consuming for short-term work. Temp agencies were unreliable. Freelancers were hit or miss. There's got to be a better way, Mrs. Chen muttered one morning after her third temp assistant in 2 weeks had called in sick. I just need someone competent who shows up when they say they will. That's when it clicked. I'd been doing exactly what these people needed for 3 years. Showing up, paying attention to details, learning quickly, and delivering quality work. What if I could build a business around that? I pitched the idea to Mr. Richardson during one of our Tuesday sessions. I want to start a consulting service for small businesses. Administrative support, project management, basic business operations, the stuff they need done but don't want to hire full-time employees to handle. He leaned forward, interested. Tell me more. I'd position it as premium temporary support. Not just another temp service, but skilled assistance for people who need someone who can think, not just follow orders, higher rates than typical temp work, but guaranteed reliability and quality. What would you call it? I'd been thinking about this. Mitchell Solutions. Simple, professional, memorable. Mr. Richardson smiled. I like it, but starting a business requires capital, insurance, business licenses. Are you prepared for those costs? This was where 3 years of disciplined saving and investing paid off. I'd managed to accumulate nearly $8,000, not wealthy by any means, but enough to launch a small service business if I was careful. More importantly, I had something many new business owners lacked: a ready network of potential clients. Helen's regular customers knew my work ethic. Mr. Richardson's colleagues had seen me handle complex tasks. I had references and potential clients before I even filed the paperwork. My first official client was Mrs. Chen, who needed help organizing a product launch for her import business. 50 hours at $25 per hour, more money than I'd ever made from a single project. I delivered everything on time and under budget, and she immediately recommended me to 2 other business owners. By the end of my first year, Mitchell Solutions was generating steady revenue. I'd moved to a better apartment, bought professional clothes, and even purchased a reliable used car. More importantly, I was building a reputation in Seattle's small business community as someone who could solve problems efficiently. The work was varied and challenging. One week, I'd be reorganizing a law firm's filing system. The next, I'd be helping a restaurant owner implement new inventory tracking. Each project taught me something new about different industries and business models. But the real breakthrough came during year 2, when I landed a contract with a mid-sized marketing firm that was expanding rapidly. They needed someone to standardize their operational procedures and train new employees on their systems. We've been growing so fast, everything's chaos, the owner, David Sterling, explained. We need someone who can come in, figure out what we're doing wrong, and create systems that actually work. It was exactly the kind of complex, high-value problem I'd been preparing for. I spent 3 months analyzing their operations, identifying inefficiencies, and designing new workflows. The project fee was $15,000, more than I'd made in my first 6 months combined. More importantly, David Sterling was impressed enough to recommend me to other growing businesses in his network. Word spread about the young woman who could walk into chaotic operations and create order. I reinvested most of my earnings back into the business. Better equipment, professional development courses, marketing materials. I was building something that could scale beyond just me trading time for money. By my 23rd birthday, I'd reached a milestone I never could have imagined at 17. I was financially independent, professionally respected, and completely in control of my own destiny. But success brought new challenges, and I was about to learn that building wealth was only the first step toward building the life I really wanted. 3 years into running Mitchell Solutions, I hit what business experts call an inflection point. I could either stay small and comfortable or take the risks necessary to build something significant. The decision was made for me when David Sterling called with an opportunity that would change everything. Sarah, I need to ask you something confidential, he said during our quarterly check-in meeting. How would you feel about a partnership opportunity? I set down my coffee, suddenly very focused. What kind of partnership? I'm launching a new division focused on operational consulting for mid-market companies. Businesses too small for the big consulting firms, but too complex for basic temp services. It's exactly what you've been doing, but scaled up with proper resources and support. He slid a proposal across the table. I want you to head the division. Not as an employee, but as an equity partner. You'd own 30% of this segment of the business. I stared at the documents, my mind racing. This wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to build something substantial. But it also meant giving up the independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. What would this look like day to day? I asked. You'd have a team of consultants working under you. Real office space, admin support, marketing budget. We'd target companies with 50 to 500 employees who need operational improvements but can't afford McKinsey's fees. The numbers were compelling. The potential client base was huge. The growth opportunity was exactly what I'd been looking for. But something held me back. David, I need to ask you something directly. Is this offer because you think I'm good at what I do? Or because you think having a young female partner would be good for marketing? He didn't look offended by the question, which was a good sign. Sarah, in the 3 years I've known you, I've watched you solve problems that stumped people with MBAs from Harvard. You see patterns others miss, you communicate complex ideas simply, and clients trust you completely. This offer is about talent, not demographics. I took the proposal home and spent 2 days analyzing it from every angle. Mr. Richardson, who'd become both mentor and friend, helped me evaluate the terms. The equity structure was fair. The growth projections were realistic. Most importantly, I'd maintain significant autonomy over my division's operations. The deciding factor came from an unexpected source. A conversation with Helen at the cafe where everything had started. I'd been stopping by regularly, partly out of loyalty and partly because her perspective on business was always practical and grounded. You know what I've learned in 40 years of running this place, she said while wiping down the counter. There's a difference between playing it safe and being smart about risk. Playing it safe keeps you where you are. Being smart about risk moves you forward. She looked at me directly. That scared kid who needed a job 5 years ago? She played it safe and worked hard. But the successful businesswoman you've become? She needs to take calculated risks to keep growing. I signed the partnership agreement the next week. Sterling Mitchell Consulting, yes, my name was literally on the building now, launched 6 months later with 3 employees and office space in downtown Seattle's financial district. Our first major client was a growing tech company that needed help scaling their operations as they expanded from a startup to a legitimate business. Within the first year, we generated over $200,000 in revenue and had a waiting list of potential clients. I'd gone from cleaning offices to owning one, from being invisible to having my expertise sought after by companies across the Pacific Northwest. The transformation was remarkable, but it came with a price I hadn't anticipated. Success made me visible in ways that attracted attention, including attention from people I'd hoped never to see again. One evening, as I was reviewing quarterly reports in my corner office, my assistant buzzed me. Sarah, there's someone here who says he knows you personally. Claims to be your father? My blood went cold. After 7 years of silence, Ray Mitchell had found me. What do you think happened when I came face to face with the man who'd called me a worthless loser? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this journey from rock bottom to the top. The confrontation that followed would test everything I'd learned about standing up for myself. Ray Mitchell stood in my office lobby looking exactly as I remembered. Gray hair, work-worn hands, and that expression of barely contained irritation that had dominated my childhood. The expensive suit couldn't hide what he was. A man who'd spent 7 years believing his daughter would fail without him. Hello, Sarah, he said, like we'd seen each other last week instead of when he threw me out with garbage bags. I kept my voice professional. Mr. Mitchell, what brings you here? His eyes swept across the office. The polished floors, the modern furniture, the view of Elliott Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how his worthless daughter had ended up here. Impressive place, he said finally. I heard through some mutual acquaintances that you'd done well for yourself. Mutual acquaintances. Right. He'd been asking around about me, probably for months, trying to figure out if the rumors were true. I gestured toward my office. Let's talk privately. As we walked through the hallway, I noticed him taking inventory of everything. The employee workspace, the conference room, the framed articles about Sterling Mitchell Consulting that had appeared in local business journals. His jaw tightened with each step. In my office, he settled into the chair across from my desk, looking uncomfortable in a way that gave me more satisfaction than it should have. So, he said, spreading his hands. Here we are. Here we are, I agreed, waiting. I'd learned from Mr. Richardson that in negotiations, the person who speaks first usually loses ground. Ray cleared his throat. I know things ended poorly between us. Maybe I was harsh, but you have to understand, we thought we were helping you become independent. I almost laughed. 7 years of silence, and this was his opening? By calling me worthless and putting my belongings in garbage bags? We were frustrated. You were so stubborn, so determined to waste money on college when you could have learned a trade, found a good man to settle down with. Like Mom did? The question hung between us. My mother had married young, never finished her education, spent her life dependent on a man who controlled every aspect of their finances. It wasn't the life I'd ever wanted, and deep down, they'd known it. Your mother is perfectly happy, he said defensively. Is she? Because from what I remember, she spent most of my childhood complaining about not having her own money or her own choices. Ray's face reddened. You always thought you were better than us. No, I said quietly. I thought I could be more than what you expected. There's a difference. What do you think will happen next? Will Sarah give her father a second chance? Or has she moved too far beyond forgiveness? Drop your predictions in the comments. I have a feeling you'll be surprised by what unfolds. He shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Look, I didn't come here to relitigate the past. I came because I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Now I did laugh. A short, sharp sound that made him flinch. You're proud? 7 years of complete silence, and now you're proud? I know I should have reached out sooner. But I kept expecting you to come back, to call, I don't know, need us again. Need you for what, exactly? Support. Family. The things daughters are supposed to need from their parents. I leaned back in my chair, studying this man who'd shaped so much of my early life through his absence of faith in me. What is it you want, Ray? The formality of using his first name wasn't lost on either of us. He noticed immediately, his mouth tightening, but he pressed forward. I want us to be a family again. I want to make up for lost time. Maybe we could help each other. There it was. The real reason for his visit. Help each other how? He looked around my office again, and I could practically see the calculations running through his head. Well, you've clearly learned about business. And your mother and I, we're not getting any younger. Maybe there are opportunities for us to work together. Work together, I repeated flatly. You know, family business. Combining our experience with your success. We could expand what you're doing, bring in the kind of wisdom that only comes with age. I stared at him for a long moment, remembering that 17-year-old girl standing on the porch with everything she owned in 2 garbage bags. Remembering the nights sleeping in Pioneer Square. Remembering the determination that had driven me through every obstacle since then. Tell me something, Ray. In all these years, did you ever wonder if maybe you were wrong about me? He shifted uncomfortably. Wrong about what? Wrong about calling me worthless. Wrong about saying I'd come crawling back. Wrong about thinking I couldn't make it on my own. Sarah, you're being dramatic. We were trying to motivate you. By destroying my self-confidence and throwing me away like garbage? We never threw you away. We knew you'd figure it out eventually. The casual dismissal of what he'd put me through, the complete lack of accountability, crystallized everything I needed to know about whether this man had actually changed. Some people grow. Others just get older. Let me tell you what actually happened, I said, standing up and walking to the window. The view of downtown Seattle stretched out below us, the city where I'd built my life from nothing. You didn't motivate me. You didn't teach me independence. You nearly destroyed me. Ray started to protest, but I held up my hand. No, you wanted to talk, so let me talk. That first night, sleeping in Pioneer Square in December rain, I genuinely thought I might die of hypothermia. The first week, eating 1 meal a day because that's all I could afford, I lost 12 pounds and almost passed out at work multiple times. I turned back to face him. You want to know what motivated me? It wasn't your tough love. It was proving to myself that I was worth more than how you treated me. Sarah, I think you're exaggerating. Am I? I walked back to my desk and pulled out my phone. Would you like to see the photos I took during those first few months? The shelter bed I slept in? The food bank where I got groceries? The bruises from sleeping on concrete? His face went pale. You kept photos? I kept everything. Every receipt, every diary entry, every moment of pain you caused. Not because I'm bitter, but because I never wanted to forget what I was capable of surviving. I sat back down, watching him process this information. In his mind, I'm sure he'd imagined I'd gone to stay with friends, maybe struggled a little but landed on my feet quickly. The reality of what I'd endured was apparently news to him. I didn't know it was that bad, he said quietly. You didn't want to know, because if you'd acknowledged how bad it was, you would have had to admit that what you did was cruel, not helpful. Ray sat in silence for several minutes, staring at his hands. When he looked up, there was something different in his expression. Not quite remorse, but closer to it than I'd ever seen from him. Maybe I made mistakes, he admitted. But look how you turned out. Look at all this. He gestured around the office. You're successful, independent, strong. Maybe our methods were harsh, but they worked. And there it was. The inability to truly accept responsibility. Even his apology was really a way of taking credit for my success. No, I said firmly. I didn't succeed because of what you did. I succeeded in spite of it. Everything you see here I built by doing the exact opposite of what you taught me. What do you mean? You taught me that I wasn't good enough, that I should settle for less, that I needed to depend on a man to take care of me. I built this business by believing I was capable of more, by refusing to settle, and by creating my own security. I opened my laptop and pulled up our company's financial statements. Would you like to see what your worthless daughter accomplished? This business generated over $2 million in revenue last year. I personally earned more money than you've probably made in the last 5 years combined. His eyes widened as he looked at the numbers. 2 million? That's just the beginning. We're projecting 30% growth this year, and I'm considering expansion to Portland and Vancouver. By the time I'm 35, I'll likely be worth more than everyone in our extended family put together. Ray stared at the screen, and I could see the wheels turning. This wasn't just about reconnecting with his daughter anymore. This was about money, opportunity, and probably more than a little envy. Sarah, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But we're family. That has to count for something. Family, I repeated. You mean the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally? Who support your dreams? Who celebrate your successes? Yes. Then tell me. Ray, where were you when I won my first major client contract? When I was featured in Seattle Business Monthly? When I bought my first house? He couldn't answer, because we both knew where he'd been. Nowhere. Silent. Probably hoping I'd fail so he could feel justified in his treatment of me. I'll tell you where you were, I continued. You were waiting for me to fail so you could say I told you so. And now that I have succeeded beyond anything you thought possible, you want to claim credit and get a piece of it. That's not, I just want us to be close again. No, you want access to my success. There's a difference. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on my door. My assistant peeked in. Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your 3 o'clock is here. I looked at Ray. I have another meeting. We'll need to wrap this up. He stood, looking desperate now. Sarah, please. Just think about it. Family is important. We could help each other. I walked him to the door. My decision already made. Ray, I want you to know something. I forgive you for what you did to me. Not because you've earned it, but because carrying anger was holding me back. Hope flickered in his eyes. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean giving you access to the life I built after you threw me away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. His face fell. Sarah, you can't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Don't contact me again. Don't come to my office. Don't ask mutual acquaintances about me. I've moved on from being your daughter, and you need to accept that. As I watched him walk away through the lobby, past the success he'd never believed I could achieve, I felt something I'd been chasing for 7 years. Complete closure. But I was about to discover that Ray Mitchell hadn't given up as easily as he appeared to. 2 months after Ray's visit, I thought the situation was resolved. I'd made my position clear. He'd left quietly, and life had returned to normal. My mistake was underestimating his persistence and his desperation. The first sign of trouble came from my assistant, Jennifer. Sarah, there's been someone calling multiple times asking about scheduling a meeting with you. When I ask for their name and company, they hang up. How many times? 7 calls in the past 3 days, always a different number. I had my suspicions, but hoped I was wrong. The confirmation came the following week when I arrived at the office to find Ray and Linda Mitchell sitting in our lobby. My mother looked older than I remembered, grayer and more worn down, but her expression was the same mixture of disappointment and barely concealed resentment I recalled from childhood. We need to talk, Ray said as soon as he saw me. Jennifer looked apologetic. They said they were family and that it was urgent. I wasn't sure. It's fine. Jennifer, please hold my calls. I led them to the conference room, choosing neutral territory instead of my personal office. Linda spoke first, her voice carrying that familiar tone of martyred suffering. Sarah, your father told me about your conversation. I think there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? About what happened when you were younger. About our intentions. I sat down across from them, noting how they'd positioned themselves as a united front. My intentions were never unclear. You threw me out with garbage bags and called me worthless. Linda's face pinched. We were trying to teach you responsibility. We thought a little hardship would help you appreciate what you had. A little hardship? I kept my voice level, though inside I was 17 again, cold and scared and hungry. Did you know I slept outside for 2 weeks because shelters were full? Did you know I went 3 days without eating because I spent my last money on a shower at the YMCA so I could look presentable for job interviews? My mother's facade cracked slightly. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. Just like Ray, you convinced yourselves that I'd be fine, that someone else would take care of me, that I'd learn some valuable lesson and come running back grateful. Ray leaned forward. But look at how it turned out. Look at what you accomplished. Stop trying to take credit for my success. I succeeded despite abandoning me, not because of it. Linda changed tactics, reaching into her purse and pulling out a tissue. Sarah, we're getting older. We made mistakes, yes, but we're family. We're your parents. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Here it was. The emotional manipulation that had controlled me throughout childhood. The guilt trips, the appeals to obligation, the implication that I was selfish for having boundaries. It means something, I said carefully. It means I learned valuable lessons about how not to treat people you're supposed to love unconditionally. Ray's patience snapped. Unconditionally? Sarah? Love has conditions. Parents have expectations. You were headed down the wrong path, and we corrected course. By throwing me away? By forcing you to grow up. The mask was off now. No more pretense about missing me or wanting to reconnect. This was about control, about being right, about justifying their actions instead of taking responsibility for them. Linda tried to play peacemaker. Ray, calm down. Sarah, we're not here to fight. We're here because we need help. And there it was. The real reason for their visit. What kind of help? Ray and Linda exchanged glances. We're having some financial difficulties, Linda said quietly. The house needs major repairs. Ray's back problems mean he can't work construction anymore. We're behind on some bills. And you thought your daughter, the one you threw out for being worthless, might bail you out? You're successful now, Ray said. What would $20,000 or $30,000 mean to someone like you? I stared at them, amazed by their audacity. You want me to give you money? We're not asking for charity, Linda said quickly. We could pay you back, maybe work out some kind of arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Ray perked up, sensing an opening. Well, like I mentioned before, we could bring our experience to your business, help you expand. Family businesses are more successful because there's built-in trust and loyalty. I almost laughed at the irony. Built-in trust and loyalty? From the people who abandoned their daughter without a second thought? We've apologized for that, Linda said. No, you haven't. You've made excuses. You've tried to justify it. You've attempted to take credit for my success. But you've never actually acknowledged that what you did was wrong and apologized without conditions. The room fell silent. This was their opportunity to actually take accountability, to offer a genuine apology that might form the basis for some kind of limited relationship moving forward. Ray broke the silence. Fine. I'm sorry we kicked you out. I'm sorry it was harder than we expected. Are you happy now? Will you help us? Even his apology was resentful, transactional. He was sorry it hadn't worked out the way he'd planned, not sorry for the cruelty of his actions. I stood up. This meeting is over. Sarah, wait, Linda pleaded. We're desperate. If you don't help us, we might lose the house. The same house you threw me out of? Please, we're family. I looked at these two people who'd given me life but never really loved me unconditionally, who'd shaped my character through their absence of support rather than their presence, who were now asking me to save them from consequences they'd created. You're absolutely right, I said. We are family. And I'm going to treat you exactly the way family treated me when I was desperate and needed help. The look of hope that crossed their faces was almost painful to watch. They thought they'd finally broken through. That family obligation would override everything they'd put me through. They'd miscalculated badly. I'm going to give you exactly what you gave me, I continued. Nothing. Ray's face darkened. Sarah, that's cold. Even for you. Cold? I learned from the best. I walked to the conference room door. Jennifer, please escort my visitors out. Linda started crying. Not genuine tears of remorse, but the manipulative tears I remembered from childhood when she didn't get her way. Sarah, please. You don't understand what we're going through. I understand perfectly. You're experiencing consequences. It's a new feeling for you, but not for me. Ray stood up, his fists clenched. You ungrateful little... Careful, I warned. my voice deadly calm. You're in my building now, surrounded by my employees and security cameras. Choose your words very carefully. He caught himself, but the mask had slipped completely. The loving father act was gone, replaced by the angry, controlling man who dominated my childhood. Jennifer appeared in the doorway with building security. Everything okay, Sarah? Yes. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell were just leaving, permanently. As security escorted them toward the elevators, Linda called back, You'll regret this, Sarah. Family is all you have in the end. I watched the elevator doors close, then returned to my office and did something I rarely allowed myself during business hours. I poured a glass of the expensive whiskey I kept for client celebrations and sat quietly processing what had just happened. 7 years. 7 years of building a life, of healing from their rejection, of proving my worth to myself and the world. And they'd waltzed back in expecting immediate access to the success they'd never believed I could achieve. But I was about to learn that Ray and Linda Mitchell had one more play to make. The call came from my attorney, Marcus Webb, 2 weeks later. Sarah, I need to see you immediately. We have a problem. An hour later, I was sitting in his downtown office staring at documents I couldn't quite believe were real. They're suing you? I asked, reading the complaint for the third time. For elder abuse, emotional distress, and alienation of affection, Marcus confirmed. They're claiming that you've deliberately isolated them from their daughter and are causing them mental anguish by refusing to provide support they're entitled to as your parents. I set the papers down. Can they do this? Anyone can file a lawsuit. The question is whether they can win. Their claim is weak legally. Parents don't have a right to financial support from successful adult children, especially when they voluntarily severed the relationship. Then why are you concerned? Marcus leaned forward. Because they're not trying to win in court. They're trying to win in the court of public opinion. Look at this. He handed me a local newspaper with the headline, Successful Businesswoman Abandons Elderly Parents. The article painted a picture of Ray and Linda as loving parents who'd made mistakes, but now faced poverty while their wealthy daughter lived in luxury, refusing to help. They've given interviews to 3 local news stations. Marcus continued. The story is framing you as the villain, the cold, successful daughter who turned her back on family. I felt sick. This could destroy my business. My clients don't want to work with someone who appears to abandon family members in need. Exactly. It's a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to pressure you into settling, which means giving them money to make the story go away. How much are they asking for? $500,000. I stared at him. $500,000? Plus a public statement about reconciliation and your commitment to supporting them going forward. Essentially, they want you to bankroll their retirement in exchange for calling off the media campaign. This was extortion, pure and simple. But it was sophisticated extortion that played on every cultural narrative about family obligation and filial duty. What are our options? We fight it, but that means months of litigation, continued negative press, and significant legal costs even when we win. Or I pay them to go away. It's not ideal, but it might be the most practical solution. I sat in silence, remembering that 17-year-old girl with garbage bags on the front porch. She'd been powerless, alone, with no resources to fight back. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Marcus, how long would it take you to prepare a comprehensive response to their claims? What kind of response? The kind that destroys their credibility completely and turns this story around. He looked intrigued. What did you have in mind? They want to play in the court of public opinion? Fine. But they chose the wrong opponent. I was about to show Ray and Linda Mitchell what their worthless daughter had really learned in the years since they'd thrown her away. And the lesson was going to cost them everything. While Ray and Linda Mitchell were giving tearful interviews about their heartless daughter, I was doing something they'd never taught me, fighting back strategically instead of emotionally. We're going nuclear, I told Marcus as we planned our response. But we're doing it smart. First, I hired the best crisis management firm in Seattle. Not to apologize or explain, but to tell the complete truth in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Within 48 hours, every major media outlet in the city had received a comprehensive package. Documentation of my homelessness following their abandonment. Photos I'd taken during those first desperate months. Financial records showing that I'd built my success without any family support, and testimonials from people who'd witnessed my journey from the streets to success. But the real nuclear option was something I'd been saving for 7 years. The recording. On that last night before they threw me out, when they were discussing their plan in the kitchen, I'd been recording on my phone. Not intentionally, I'd been making voice notes for a school project and forgot to turn it off. But captured on that recording was their actual conversation about throwing me out. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. My father's voice was clear on the recording. Maybe a few nights in the cold will teach her to respect what she has here. What if something happens to her? My mother had asked. She'll figure it out. And if she doesn't, well, maybe that tells us something about her character. My mother's response was the most damning. I just hope she doesn't try to come crawling back too quickly. She needs to really suffer first. I'd held onto this recording for 7 years, not out of spite, but as insurance. I'd hoped I'd never need to use it. The local investigative reporter who'd been most sympathetic to my parents' story was the first to hear it. Within hours, it was playing on every news station in the city. The narrative shifted overnight. Heartless parents planned daughter's homelessness ran as the lead story on the evening news. The reporter who'd originally portrayed me as cold and calculating now led a segment called Surviving Family Betrayal, one woman's journey from the streets to success. But I wasn't done. The crisis management team had uncovered something interesting about Ray and Linda's finances. They weren't behind on bills because of unexpected hardships. Ray had spent the last 5 years gambling away their savings at local casinos, and Linda had run up massive credit card debt shopping and trying to maintain appearances. The house they claimed to be losing? They'd already refinanced it twice to cover gambling losses and discretionary spending. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were victims of their own poor choices. More importantly, we discovered that they'd been monitoring my success for years. Social media searches, business record lookups, even hiring a private investigator to compile a report on my assets. This wasn't spontaneous desperation. This was calculated extortion. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Helen, the cafe owner who'd given me my first job, had been following the story. She called me personally. Sarah, I've been watching this circus and I have something you need to see. 3 years earlier, Ray Mitchell had come into her cafe asking questions about me. He'd pretended to be a concerned father trying to reconnect with his estranged daughter. Helen, being protective of my privacy, had refused to give him information. But she'd had security cameras running, and Ray had been recorded talking to his companion, Linda, about their plan to approach me once they'd gathered enough information about my finances. We'll wait until she's really successful. Ray's voice was clear on the recording. Then we'll play the family card. She's always been soft-hearted. She'll feel guilty and pay up. The media had a field day with this revelation. The narrative wasn't just about parents who'd abandoned their daughter anymore. It was about calculated predators who'd deliberately planned to exploit their own child's success. Ray and Linda's lawyer advised them to drop the lawsuit immediately. But the damage to their reputation was complete. Ray was banned from the local casinos where he'd been a regular. Linda's social circle, learning about the planned extortion of their own daughter, ostracized them completely. The story went national. CNN ran a segment on family extortion, using their case as the primary example. I received thousands of supportive messages from people who'd experienced similar family betrayals. More importantly, my business grew exponentially. Clients were impressed not just by my professional success, but by how I'd handled personal crisis with integrity and strategic thinking. Sterling Mitchell Consulting expanded to 3 cities and doubled our revenue within 6 months. But the real victory came in a phone call I received 3 months later. Ray Mitchell called my office one last time, not to apologize or ask for money, but to blame me for the consequences he was facing. "You destroyed us," he said, his voice thick with rage. "We're your parents. We gave you life." I listened calmly to his rant, then delivered the line I'd been waiting 7 years to say. "Ray, do you remember what you told me when you threw me out? You said I'd come crawling back, that I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything. Sarah, you were wrong about all of it. I didn't come crawling back. I built something you could never have imagined. And the only worthless people in this story are the ones who threw away their daughter and then tried to cash in on her success." I paused, savoring the moment. "I want you to know something. Every day for the rest of your life, when you wake up facing the consequences of your choices, I want you to remember that your worthless daughter is living the life you never believed she could achieve, and you'll never be part of it." I hung up and blocked their number permanently. 5 years have passed since that final conversation with Ray Mitchell. I'm 32 now, and Sterling Mitchell Consulting has become one of the most respected business consulting firms in the Pacific Northwest. We employ 43 people, have offices in 4 cities, and last year we crossed the $10 million revenue mark. But the real measure of success isn't in the numbers. It's in the life I've built completely on my own terms. I'm engaged to David Chen, a fellow entrepreneur who runs a sustainable technology company. We met at a business conference, not through family connections or social obligations, but because we were both speakers sharing expertise we'd earned through our own efforts. He knows my story and respects the boundaries I've established with my biological family. The house I bought last year has a view of Puget Sound and enough space for the family David and I plan to start together. It's nothing like the modest house I grew up in. This one was chosen and purchased by someone who never has to worry about being thrown out. I've stayed in touch with the people who supported me during the hardest times. Helen still runs her cafe, though she's hired managers and works fewer hours now. She was the first person I called when David proposed, and she'll be walking me down the aisle since my biological father forfeited that privilege years ago. Mr. Richardson, now in his 70s, serves on Sterling Mitchell's advisory board. He often tells clients about the young woman who started as his filing assistant and built a multi-million-dollar company. The difference between Sarah and most entrepreneurs, he says, is that she learned early that success isn't given. It's earned through surviving what should have broken you. Marcus, my attorney, has become a close friend and trusted advisor. We've worked together on 3 more family extortion cases over the years, helping other successful people defend themselves against relatives who saw their achievements as opportunities for exploitation. But perhaps the most meaningful relationship has been with a young woman named Jessica, whom I met through a mentorship program for homeless youth. She was 19 when we first spoke, living in her car after being thrown out for being gay. Something about her reminded me of myself at 17, angry but determined, desperate but refusing to give up. I hired Jessica as an intern 3 years ago. Last month, I promoted her to project manager. She's everything I used to be, fierce, intelligent, and absolutely committed to proving wrong everyone who underestimated her. How do you not hate them? Jessica asked me recently, referring to Ray and Linda. How do you not wake up every day furious about what they did? It was a question I'd asked myself many times over the years. I used to, I told her honestly, but I realized that carrying hatred was like letting them live rent-free in my head. The best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was building something so successful that their absence from my life was obviously their loss, not mine. I still think about that 17-year-old girl sometimes, standing on the porch with garbage bags containing everything she owned. If I could go back and tell her something, it would be this. The people who abandoned you did you a favor. They forced you to discover strength you didn't know you had. They taught you to value yourself when no one else would. They showed you that the only person you can truly depend on is yourself. And that's enough. Ray and Linda Mitchell live in a small apartment now. Their house lost to foreclosure. Their relationship with their extended family permanently damaged by their attempted extortion. I hear updates occasionally through mutual acquaintances, not because I seek the information, but because their downward spiral has become local gossip. I feel no satisfaction in their struggles, but I feel no obligation to rescue them either. They made choices, just as I did. The difference is that my choices were about building something positive, while theirs were about tearing someone else down for their own benefit. The lawsuit they filed was dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never file similar claims again. Their credibility was so thoroughly destroyed that no attorney will take their case on contingency, and they can't afford to pay legal fees up front. But the real justice isn't in their failure. It's in my success. Last month, I was invited to speak at a conference about family estrangement and business success. The audience was filled with entrepreneurs who'd overcome difficult family relationships to build their own achievements. The hardest lesson I learned, I told them, was that family isn't just about biology. Real family consists of people who celebrate your successes, support your dreams, and love you unconditionally. Sometimes those people aren't related to you at all. After my speech, a woman approached me in tears. "I've been struggling with whether to cut contact with my toxic parents," she said. "Your story gave me permission to choose my own peace over their expectations." That conversation reminded me why I'd chosen to make my story public, despite the pain of reliving it. Every person who finds the courage to leave toxic relationships, every young adult who refuses to accept less than they deserve, every entrepreneur who builds success despite family opposition, they're all victories against the people who tried to diminish us. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more content about overcoming family trauma and building success on your own terms. Your support helps me reach others who need to hear that they're not alone in facing family betrayal. And remember, the best revenge against people who call you worthless is building a life so valuable that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Sometimes the family that throws you away does you the biggest favor of your life. They force you to discover that you're enough all by yourself. And that's a lesson worth more than their approval ever could have been.